Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another EAM Experts episode. Today with us, we have Navin Kulkarni, and he's from Infor. So he's going to be telling us a lot about artificial intelligence and how does that get involved with both maintenance and asset performance management. Navin, how are you?
Ernesto, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
And of course, we have Angel Torres from Visual K. He's with us today again to put in his 2 cents and let us know what's good with the Visual K team. Hey, yo, nice.
Hey, how is it going? Everybody good?
Everybody good.
All right, let's do this.
EAM Experts. In this podcast, we will discuss the latest EAM trends and critical issues in maintenance and asset performance. Together with our expert guest, we will guide you on how to transform your maintenance management into strategic competitive advantages. Join us on live episodes or listen to past broadcasts on any of our platforms. visualk.com, LinkedIn, YouTube, Deezer, Apple Music, and Spotify. Subscribe and enjoy.
All right. We were talking from before the call about vacations, so I think we should talk about work for a little bit. So, Navin, how can what's your role in all of this in artificial intelligence? How does it involve Infor in all of this, and what are some of the things you can tell us about it?
Sure, Ernesto. To start with, I'm the product director for Infor EAM, and as part of product management responsibilities, one of my roles is to give shape to Infor EAM's roadmap and vision, right? So, and it's not obviously I go in a dark room and come up with a roadmap and vision. It's really working together with the community and our key stakeholders, our customers, understanding where the market is heading, and then agreeing upon a vision and roadmap for our product, right? So it's a very democratic process. So, and my goal is to not only help formulate that, but also help execute that. And in that vein, one of the key things that we've been driving for a long time on the Infor EAM roadmap is EAM is a great tool for achieving business outcomes. How you mold the application to mirror your business processes, or even better your business processes. But EAM also has been for a long time building what I would call data analysis tools within the application itself. But we understand that the scope of data science, and as a computer science engineer, I hesitate to use the word artificial intelligence right out of the gate, right? So, because AI has so much connotation attached to it, but really understanding that you have a plethora of data both within your EAM application, outside of your EAM system, but how do you leverage that to benefit your business outcomes, right? I mean, and every stakeholder has different outcomes that they want to achieve, but as a business as a whole, you're driving towards certain outcomes as well. So, and I think that's the realm of asset performance management, or even where data science and artificial intelligence, I guess, if you want to say, comes into play for EAM roadmap. So,
awesome. So what I'm hearing is a lot of trial and error, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think while it's from my vantage point, I see different technologies and use cases converging in the marketplace, right? So in the past, even today, when we talk to customers, even though there's data buried in different areas and relevant data available, it's very hard to get to, reconcile. And many customers I see are still doing this in spreadsheets, right? So take an extract from
right.
and then they do their reliability analysis on the side in a spreadsheet. However, I mean, which is fine. And if it works for your organization, I'm sure you're doing a great job, but doing okay or just average is sometimes not enough today, right? And especially when the world is changing. So to gain competitive advantage, you really have to think beyond just being reactive. So that's where this is all, as you said, trial and error. Some of this is pulling together the business knowledge you've gained, throughout the years, and then applying that to data and seeing what outcomes you can get. But also on the other technology perspective, there's so many tools available in the marketplace that can help make this better than a spreadsheet. So that's a little bit of a trial and error. So.
Navin, if I may, one of the you mentioned your advantage point, and to me, one of the most interesting things about your job is the fact that you have like truly global visibility over EAM, the customers, the partners like Visual K, the implementations. And you mentioned something about the reliability engineers out there doing their analysis. So a couple of questions around that. Based on your experience, is it common to see reliability engineers as part of the either maintenance or engineering staff? Is that something that's pervasive, or is it still like pockets where there's one reliability engineer here, another there, or is it becoming the norm?
It's I would say it's definitely not common.
Okay.
And I would say, just like with anything, it's a distribution. There are companies and organizations that do realize that this is a challenge and a problem for them, and they want to work towards it proactively. And then there are other companies and organizations that are comfortable with the status quo. They know that they have reliability engineers working, doing their thing. They have maintenance folks and operations folks doing their thing. And there's some companies who don't even care about it, right? So, there's like a spectrum. It's definitely not pervasive that people talk to each other. Although some people are definitely talking about getting to that paradigm of everything being pervasive, and then more teamwork across the aisle, so to say. So,
and do you think we certainly need to have reliability engineers at each site in order for this to come together and work? Or is it possible to fill in some of the gaps using technologies such as EAM with data analysis? I mean, how do you see it?
I mean, some of the bigger organizations, I would say, do not have a reliability engineer at every site. And the reason is not because they don't feel like there's a need for a reliability engineer at every site. It's because they've gotten to a point where through operator rounds and through remote assistance or best practices, they've achieved a level where they don't need a reliability engineer present there all the time. They do come. I mean, some of the exceptional cases I've seen is if there's an RCA event. Then I've seen, a central team, including a reliability engineer, come to site and then really evaluate what's happened based on, what the event type is. So.
Okay. And where does the technology come into play to help with some of these efforts? Let's say that there's an event that needs to be investigated, or there's an RCM process, happening. Where does the technology come and help?
I mean, technology obviously is, probably pervasive throughout the entire chain. But the goal really here is to understand, I keep going back to what is the outcome that you want to drive from this whole process, right? So if you think that your organization already has the right SOPs and procedures and all the documentation that needs to be done at the front end to make things happen, then maybe the goal of the reliability engineer is a little different, right? His goal is to make sure that what is the efficiency of the production, if there is any risk associated, I mean, mitigation of risks, or doing more of a proactive work. But I do feel like if the front end itself is not set up, it is important for the reliability engineer to get involved, not me in the work management area, but in the proper installation and providing proper task plan and instructions of saying how this equipment should be maintained, right? I think there's a handoff there in the front end as well.
Okay. All right, great. Ernesto, anything?
Yeah, so you mentioned artificial intelligence is kind of a big word for the whole thing, right? What would you use? Should we say kind of predictive maintenance in focusing on maintenance, right? Should it be more on predictive maintenance kind of phrase, or should we name it something else, right? What are we looking at in terms of that whole spectrum for maintenance?
Yeah, I think before even we jump into the AI predictive maintenance paradigm, I have a story, because this was also a learning experience, and this is still a learning experience for us, right? And
I'm still learning as well.
well, initially when we used to, this is a few years ago, when we started talking to customers about, there are tools within EAM today that provide some reliability information. We have Bible and Laplace and Croanza and all of those tools that are built into EAM. But we started to talk to customers about what else is out there that we need to be thinking about beyond just what we've delivered with EAM, right? And there, of course, at that point, we didn't have a lot of guidance to say, here's exactly what you should be thinking about. So we would give customers an open slate and say, come up with whatever use cases you want. And typically we would think exactly what you just mentioned, right? So we would say, maybe they'll come up with a predictive maintenance use case. But talking to customers, the use case were taking a shot and then blowing like a bunch of holes in the wall, right? So people would come up with uses around data cleansing. Some people, the data I capture is terrible. Can there be some sort of predictive solution or a machine learning solution that can cleanse my data and make sure that whatever data I put in is proper? Or people had, requests around spare part or inventory management, or even procurement, or managing their workforce. And now, of course, predictive maintenance. So the use cases were so spread across. So there's certainly in every area where we collect data from EAM or other systems, an opportunity to see what we can do with the data, right?
Right.
And for asset intensive industries, especially where you have so much capital tied up in these assets, and you have to make sure that you get the best value from these assets, predictive maintenance becomes important because of what we talked about earlier, that right, the reliability engineer has to make sure that production is always up. He's ensuring that there is no risk associated with what's going on. And then he wants to make sure that the performance of the asset is to this accepted service levels. Right? So those are things that are now possible through the paradigm of predictive maintenance.
But you said something interesting, sorry, Ernesto, about like I'm getting, inputs from my people on the field. Not necessarily all of it is good or accurate, or things that I can act upon. We've heard from some customers where some of their facilities are having issues with people just following procedure and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that question always comes back, like how can you help me sure that I get the data I need, I get people to use the tools that we have. So I'm sure you've heard this one before many times. So what are some of the practical approaches that you can prescribe to somebody in a situation like that? Because I mean, we cannot enforce that people are going necessarily to use the system, right? And neither to use it right, but how can we help that happen?
Yeah, and I'm going to speak from experience, is that having worked in multiple software companies, you do work with several internal systems, off-the-shelf systems that are very well built, systems that are not so well built. And there is a common pattern of how anybody would try to use the application, right? So, of course, making sure that this is an easy to use application. It's contextual to who I am as a person and what work I am doing is a key part of all of that. If I have a generic screen with 50 fields to fill for every person in the company, that may not go over well, as opposed to knowing that, I'm a person out in the field. My primary job is not to be looking at a screen. My primary job is to be actually performing work. The screen that's with me is for assistance and data collection, and it should help me optimize my work as opposed to becoming an hour-long activity to enter my data, right? So thinking about those things really matter, and that's where I think EAM really shines. As you know, not just on the desktop or the EAM-based application side, but even on the mobile side, we're a highly configurable solution. So allowing users to see information that's in context, the right documentation, allowing them to capture the right type of information. So if you don't want them to type in free-form text fields, having them in a coded format so that this is a much strict way of capturing information, right? Instead of using closing comments, using closing code. So more technical, but there way you control this, but all starts with make sure that the user has acceptance to the system that he's using. And then you can have guardrails that follow after that.
So I have a question, right? We had customers that are looking to be able to trend some information and, looking at 5-year, 10-year term, being able to have some sort of intelligent tool that will be able to interpret data and have predictive or any solutions that have some sort of intelligence, right? They have to move from free text fields to those, like you said, strict coded information that they have. But is there any way that they could, move in organically smart way instead of just having to implement in artificial intelligence at this point? Does it?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if I understand correctly, you're asking how can this be sort of a more stepwise approach as opposed to just jumping all into doing this, right?
Right.
And that's a good question because, again, this is speaking from my experience is many times when we do talk to customers, we see there is a ecosystem map that customers put up and say, I have 120 applications, and then I have this one application that does checklists. I have this one application that does work orders, and then I do these spreadsheets for reliability. So how can you help me put all this together and, as you just mentioned, do all the artificial intelligence projects? So,
right.
And my mind always goes to, can we take the first step, right? So where are you in your journey? I mean, if you're in that journey where everything is completely disparate from your EAM application, take understanding, where would the most highest value impact lie? Should you start to bring in things like inspection data or closing codes or doing some simpler things that can start adding value immediately to what you're trying to do, and then at the same time understanding what are the other areas. So we talked about reliability centered maintenance, we talked about predictive maintenance. What are those other areas that could really help me in what I'm trying to achieve in my business. And what I mean by that is, if, let's say, if I have safety issues in my company, I've had issues with sustainability or regulatory reporting. If you are audited by the EPA, maybe that's an area that you might want to focus first before getting into artificial intelligence for inventory optimization.
Right.
And then, of course, EAM has tools around for safety and sustainability and reporting around all of that to help you kind of organically grow. But on top of all of that, what we also do is we understand that EAM is not the be-all, end-all system. So we are, however, deployed in cloud, which inherently helps us be an open solution that you can extract the data from EAM. You can leverage other solutions, third-party solutions for artificial intelligence or machine learning, and then get the insights from your data, right? So it's not only the opportunities there to expand beyond what you have within EAM organically, but also the fact that EAM is such an open application and it's cloud-based native solution. You can leverage other tools in multi-tenant cloud to achieve a lot of what you want to do as a step by.
So Navin, you mentioned a couple of things that we've been working and thinking about. One of them has to do with the fact that you probably need to get the basics right, right? Open your work orders, close your work orders, make sure you get some useful information in them. And we also see an opportunity there, and what I want is for you to comment on this. But for example, you mentioned failure codes, right? So perhaps failure codes is a good guardrail in the sense that you keep a limited number of options as to what kind of information you're going to need to close that work order and get something useful out of it. The other thing is that, for example, when it comes to closing codes, we see closing codes as a foundation for reliability, right? Your weighable analysis, even your artificial intelligence, if you're going to go that far, can certainly benefit from having the right failure codes in there. So what we've been telling customers is, trust me on this one. Start putting in your closing codes. Eventually, we will use them. Is
Right.
that a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even if customers are not analyzing that today, because maybe their first step is to understand, am I being efficient with my work? Am I paying my workers properly if I'm starting and stopping labor, collecting labor time, understanding the cost of maintenance? Those are really the initial dilemmas I would say customers are trying to face. But as they try to grow up in maturity curve, the next step really is to be like, okay, why are these assets failing? And what type of work am I performing when I do send people out to the field? And do I really need to be sending them out as often as they are? So all of those questions would be answered by things like closing codes, and so absolutely.
Okay, all right, we'll keep preaching to that choir. Ernesto.
Yeah, so and I think that's a good starting point, but getting that information in the system, just having those key failure codes, just having the ones that actually happen, it's still a challenge, right? You really can't get a lot of information that you can, failure codes are, even if they are standard for different equipment, they may be different between industries and anything like that. So it's not a plug and play kind of thing where you just input failure codes and keep working on those. On your point, you mentioned earlier that inventory is a good application, and we tend to forget that asset management is not just maintaining the equipment, right, or the facilities, right? It goes further than that. You have to take into account the resources, including materials, labor, all the costing involved there, if there's a safety issue. why is it that inventory is a good starting point for those solutions?
Well, I wouldn't say inventory is a good starting point. It's one of the starting points. I think I would say it really again depends on. I keep going back to what is your business analysis. I mean, if you're a lean shop, I mean, if you don't really carry any inventory and you just procure everything on demand, perhaps optimizing your inventory may not help you that much. But quite often, you see that if you're a large organization, asset intensive, you do carry a lot of inventory, and inventory carrying cost is a line item on your income statement or balance sheet. So, and why is that? The reason is because every time you carry a certain spare or inventory, either it can become obsolete, its value condition might deteriorate sitting on the shelf, or there is an opportunity cost involved in which you could have procured something else or used that particular, that capital for something else. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why organizations want to optimize the type of inventory they carry, right? And many times we see that it is directly correlated to maintenance practices and the condition of the asset. Because and this is, I won't mention who the customer is, but for customers who
don't put anyone on the spot.
No, but they mentioned that they have, thousands and thousands of pumps and critical pieces of equipment, and a lot of times they don't understand what is the condition of the asset. They just know that the pump was working fine, but is not working fine now.
And then it stopped.
Or they just go like, we're just going to replace it because I know it's a critical piece of equipment, and if it fails, somebody will yell at me. So I'm just going to say that just replace it. So that also is not okay, because now either you're buying an asset out of life cycle and you're paying more, of course, you're replacing an asset or part more regularly, or as Angel mentioned, it just fails, and then you're calling a supplier and saying that, hey, I need you to airlift this critical piece of equipment in the middle of nowhere and pay all sorts of premium for it, right?
Mm-hmm. We have also seen that happen.
So that's the reasons why we see organizations like making that a focus of really optimizing inventory, and it's a great use case for data science and artificial intelligence.
Well, if I may, sometimes one of the challenges specifically around inventory is the fact that almost every organization out there has their ERP and their financials and their accounting, and typically inventory management kind of falls somewhere in between, the asset management function and the accounting function. So it could either be sitting on another system, or the responsibilities on inventory may fall, within accounting, not necessarily within, maintenance or engineering. So it's kind of one of those things that's always somewhere in that frontier, right? And depending on who has more power or who has more push, then it gets, pushed to one side or the other. We've seen it happen.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, in some organizations, it's all on the central warehouse, and they're responsible. Some people have their own separate MRO operations, and plus system-wise, who's responsible for it? You're absolutely right. So.
Typically, what we try to tell people is, what is the inventory for? Is it so that you can perform the required maintenance? And if the answer is yes, maybe it should be on the other side of the fence, right? It should be on the maintenance side. But that's just me.
So Angel, I have a question for you. So industry-wise, what type of customers or industries would benefit from having something like an inventory optimization tool?
Well, if you think of, let's say, two big groups of industries, right? think oil and gas, power gen, asset intensive industries, that most of what they do is generate just kind of like one thing, right? Power plant is generating electricity. An oil and gas field is, either pumping out oil or natural gas. And then they have this inventory, which is basically spares so that their operation will continue working. That's probably a good use case, right? If you're looking, let's say, manufacturing, these guys are putting, 100 different SKUs, and they also happen to have, spare parts inventory. That's a more complicated situation. And it's hard for you to say to a stores person, well, if you're going to manage like raw materials for manufacturing, you go here. But then if it's something related to maintenance, you go there, right? So we try to keep it simple and try to keep it, to just one system, right? So if your operation is very heavy on raw materials and then some spares, hey, by all means, keep it on the manufacturing side of the fence. If you're basically pumping out oil or gas or electricity, and then you have a whole bunch of spares, hey, let's keep it on the maintenance side. Obviously, there's no, there's no right or wrong answer here. It will all depend on the situation. But the way you're looking at it from an industry perspective, I think there are some industries which are, let's say, easier to say, well, put it on this side versus, put it on the other. So that's kind of my take on it.
Been there, done that.
It's been done. And then we have anything in between. We used to have a customer who was a food manufacturer. And then again, they didn't have that many raw materials. But even the raw material, they were keeping in the same inventory on the EAM side, for example. So it will all depend, right? What makes the most sense. But whenever we see spare parts, and if you think of it, the reason why they're there in the first place is so that maintenance can do their job, they can keep things running. Let's try to give them some options and tools so that they can optimize the inventory, because you can have one of each, right? Typically,
Right.
You have to make some calls. Cash is not an infinite resource. So you need to make sure that you have the right spares for the critical assets. So there's a whole narrative around how to do inventory management for maintenance. What we've seen is, there's typically this tug of war between the accountants and how much cash they have, and then the maintenance people saying, well, but we need one of each to keep this plant running, right? So it's not an easy decision, but certainly you need to start somewhere, right? So to me,
Right.
Would be identify your critical equipment, identify the critical spares for that equipment, and then look at your inventory and find out, if you have the right critical spares for the critical pieces of equipment, and then you deal with the rest, right? So there are ways around it. It's not impossible.
Awesome. So Navin, I have a question for you, and this is kind of a sidebar. We know that the Hexagon transaction is close to us, and Infor EAM is going to be moved to Hexagon. What's your take on it, and what's your perspective from your department?
Well, I mean, we've had now a little over a month to digest the news. And when we first heard of the acquisition from Hexagon acquiring EAM and becoming a part of the Hexagon family, our first sort of thought was, how will this fit? And because obviously we had a strategy with Infor, and EAM has been one of the most successful products in the marketplace. How will we carry forward this strategy and our customers to Hexagon? And the more we've kind of dug into Hexagon, understood their philosophy, we're really excited about this change. And there's several reasons for it. And the three primary reasons that we're absolutely ecstatic about this change is because Hexagon really plays in the field, I would say, that is relevant to EAM. And not to say that Infor didn't do that. Infor is an enterprise application company. Integrations with ERP systems, integration with other applications that Infor had has been critical for EAM success as well. But majority of EAM customers are still non-Infor ERP customers. And these are customers who are in asset-intensive industries. They don't just look at just a maintenance as a function of their broader organization. Maintenance is actually front and center and critical to them, right? And I feel like the technologies that Hexagon has, both on the edge side, which is sensor technology, technology to gather data and intelligence from the field, but also their visualization technology around GIS systems, their engineering solutions like PNID systems or CAD/CAM solutions will really help bring I would say, connect the dots between engineering, construction, installation, operations, and maintenance, which I don't think any other maintenance application in the industry has. So definitely excited about the prospects. And the third reason why we're really excited about this is our customers. I was in Greenville, our EAM's headquarters, de facto headquarters a few weeks ago. And I actually happened to run into a couple of customers, and they said this to me, is that we are very excited about this move. We've been kind of wondering when will EAM grow into these arenas. They've seen our roadmap of executing around asset performance management and asset investment planning, but they were also wondering around emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. And I think this is a great stepping point for us to continue to move towards that.
Awesome. So I think we're running a little bit out of time, but I just wanted to do a quick closeout on what we just spoke about. So to get any sort of intelligent solutions out of your system, one of the things we spoke about was getting or starting small, right? Identify points where it would make sense to you to implement some sort of solution, not necessarily to go far into artificial intelligence, which may be your ultimate goal, but essentially to get you started somewhere. Anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, you summarized it very well. The only thing I would say is that I think EAM has a great ecosystem and partner community and consulting community, and there's a lot of experience and brain power there. So I know our customers are experts in their asset management business processes, their equipment, but I would say a good thing would be to reach out to us, product team or our partners, to really understand what are the other things that our customers may not be even thinking of, right? So, and we obviously learn from them, and we'd love to partner with them through this journey. The only thing I would
awesome. Like. Anything you would like to add, Angel?
No, this is a journey. It's not a destination. We are learning together. Both Infor and partners like us are bringing customers into the fold, doing some experimentation. I think by now everybody knows how to put together a work order in any system, right?
Right.
That's not a challenge anymore. Now it's a time to think a little bit beyond that, and there's a full menu out there in terms of options and technologies, right? And I guess that the only way around that is to choose some appetizer, try it. You don't like it or it doesn't work as expected, then let's move down the menu and continue the journey. That's all I would say.
Right. So I would say, trust the process, right? It's not a straight road, and you probably won't have the solution on the first time, because you have to learn not only from the tool, but also from your corporate side. So there's a lot of things that need to be perhaps redefined just to make sure that it makes sense. You may find a lot of things that don't make sense currently, and they could be made somewhere, some way better. So there's a lot of things that will help you improve, not only with your assets, but also with your internal procedures. So is there anything else you would like to add, or should we close it out?
As very exciting to be here. And so if you guys want to spend some more time in the future, I'd love to come by and chat. So this was great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us, and like always, thank you for your help. We really appreciate what you do, not only for EAM, but for the customers out there and for partners like Visual K. Thank you so very much.
Yep.
Thank you,
Navin, thank you very much for being with us. To all of our listeners, we are distributing this recording and all of the other ones that we've had in the past from EAM experts on our YouTube channel, LinkedIn profiles, Visual K blog, and of course Apple Music and Spotify. So let us know what you think, and be out there ready for the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.